Hi, this is Carolyn Blakeman with the former Feds Group Freedom Foundation. I'm here with Lindsay. She's going to tell us what happened to her father in a American hospital. Um, Thank you for being here, Lindsay. You can find her interview on BitChute Rumble and our website, chbmp.org. If you wouldn't mind telling us what happened.
All right. When COVID started, we followed the frontline doctors, and I got ivermectin. I got all the medicines that I know that my parents would need to combat COVID and stay healthy. So we did that and made it all the way through 2020 and 2021. And right at the end of 2021, my father got sick around Thanksgiving with what they said was an upper respiratory infection, gave him some antibiotics and said he'd be, fine in a couple weeks. And um, after Thanksgiving, he still wasn't feeling 100% but was fine until a couple of days before Christmas. At that point, he was sick in bed, and we were calling around asking if we could get monoclonal antibodies. And he had an appointment with the VA because he's a veteran, and he has been deemed to be 100% deaf by the VA and had hearing aids and was due to go in for a checkup. So when he went in for a checkup, the VA hospital said, we don't have COVID tests, so you need to go to the like doc in a box kind of emergency day clinic kind of thing. So they took him there and they had the test and they said, yep, you do have COVID. And basically just sent him home and said, you need to rest and drink fluids and that kind of thing. And they basically didn't give us any more direction. So my mom called Elbert County Hospital and found out that they were doing monoclonal antibodies. So the VA hospital she contacted them back and they said, well, we'll call over there and tell them that Gary needs some monoclonal antibodies. Well, it was 4 days before they could get him in. So they ended up getting him in, and he was too weak to even stand on his own. He had to be wheeled in for the monoclonal antibodies at the hospital, and my mom had to leave him there for, I think, 4 or 6 hours. And when she came back, he started to act like he was feeling a little bit better, but just needed to rest. And so she took him home, and right around New Year's, his oxygen level, we got her an oximeter, O2 monitor, um, and I knew that the oxygen levels dropping was when most people go to the hospital. And then we were trying to avoid that. So it was New Year's Eve day, and his oxygen level was dropping into the high 80s. And I started looking for an oxygen machine that I could buy, a concentrator. And I finally found a guy who said, you can pick it up. Um, but I ended up getting the O2 concentrator a day late, because that night, my his oxygen level dropped into the low 80s, and we were just scared for him. So we said, just take him to the emergency room and get him some oxygen, and then by tomorrow I'm going to have this oxygen machine and we'll take him home. Well, they put him in ICU, or put him in first, yeah, ICU. And from the jump, are you vaccinated? No. Why aren't you vaccinated? Kind of grilling him on the questions. And he said, I just don't think it's right for me. I don't think, it would help. And they kept wanting to ventilate him, even when he was talking and coherent and breathing fine. He just needed oxygen. And they said, well, it just makes it easier on us if we can ventilate you. And I was kind of torn. I was like, I cannot believe that they're more focused on it makes it easier on us rather than on the patient. And he had had open heart surgery for a 90% blockage in 2020 and survived. We had no idea that they had put him on a COVID floor when he had heart surgery. So he had survived living, for a week in a COVID floor, but yet now they wanted just to ventilate him and make it easier on them because they were short staffed. So we finally, he kept saying no, and he's a DNR, do not resuscitate, do not ventilate. He did not want that. So he kept telling them no, and luckily they listened to that. But then they said, okay, he's got COVID. He's in ICU. You cannot come see him. We were shut out from seeing him when he was in ICU, and especially shut out when he got to the COVID floor. Once he got to the COVID floor, we knew that he did not have his hearing aids, and he was approving treatment that we were not being apprised of. We did not get told anything. So when the day after Christmas, my mom called me, or no, I'm sorry, the day after New Year's, my mom called me and said, the doctor just called me from the hospital. They're going to start him on remdesivir that's supposed to help. And I said, no, stop. Tell them to not give him remdesivir. He has kidney stones active. He's had open heart surgery. He's had kidney problems. He's had all sorts of organ issues that are fine now, but that's going to shut down his organs. And I knew that would shut down his organs. And she said, okay, I'm calling him back. And I said, I'm packing a bag. I'm coming to your house. So it's about an hour and a half from my house to theirs. And once we got there, she was still waiting on the doctor to call back. So they had been giving him doses of remdesivir and asking him if they could give him this medicine. And they weren't telling him what it was or anything. And because he has no hearing aids, he was just saying, yes, okay, going along with whatever they were saying, because no one would think in a million years that a hospital staff would want to give you something that would detriment you. And so, the whole time we're kind of texting with him, and the doctor finally called literally 15 minutes after I got to my mom's. And the doctor said, this is what we're doing. I said, no, do not give him any more remdesivir. Do not give him baricitinib. That's bad too. You have given him both of these and we were not aware. And they said, well, do you have a medical directive? And I said, no, we didn't know we needed one. And so at that point, I'm on text trying to text attorneys that I know to try to get a medical directive, but you have to have him signing, and he's in the hospital and no one's allowed in to see him. So we had a frontline doctors, like the order kind of thing. It's kind of a declaration. It says, we do not want this, we do not want that. And I asked the doctor, and I taped the doctor. So I still have the recording of her laughing at me when I asked for high dose vitamins, when I asked for ivermectin. And I said that the NIH says this is not detrimental. There was even a erectile dysfunction drug that was coming out at the time, and they were saying how it was helping to come out of COVID and helping the breathing because it expands the blood vessels. And they said, we're not trying that either. We're not going to give him anything. High dose vitamins don't work. That's jibber jabber. There's nothing to that. There's no medical research on high dose vitamins. And so we said, can we come up and bring this directive to you? And she's like, sure, come on up. So we went up there and I taped her, basically shutting us out, telling us that we have no say in his care and that he's consenting to all of this. And we said, he doesn't have his hearing aids. He has top of the line hearing aids from the VA, and without them, he cannot hear you. So he's just saying, okay, to go along with whatever you want to tell him. Meanwhile, he's a diabetic. They are giving him insulin shots instead of the pills. They're giving him a therapeutic dose of steroids, which is barely nothing. It needs 10 times the amount to be effective. And this whole time, he was doing better. He was in there for 12 days and he died on January 11th. And his oxygen level was getting better, but they weren't proning him. They were not coming in to get him up. They were letting him lay. They weren't exercising his lungs. The physical or respiratory therapist would come in for 45 minutes. And I have the notes where they basically said they worked on his breathing, but he was never prone. He was never turned over. He was never stood up. So he wasn't getting what I think the protocol was, and what a respiratory therapist is supposed to do when they come into a room daily. And I am I'm convinced that he got 3 or 4 doses of remdesivir. And once she admitted that they stopped the remdesivir, but since they had a half dose left, they went ahead and gave it to him. And that was after I told her on the phone not to give him remdesivir. So at that point, they said we could bring his hearing aids up, but we could not go in the room. And that it was basically what is it called? Where you're basically at end of life is the only time we're going to be able to go in and see him is when he's too bad they don't think he's coming home. So we were fighting, I mean, basically trying to get in there. My mom bought some magazines and books, and I was like, maybe I can sneak some ivermectin in there, sneak some vitamins in there. And she was like, no, they've already said they're going to go through it. So we went to the hospital, and they literally went through the bag and searched everything, then took it up to his room. And he's texting us the whole time saying, well, they're saying that my breathing's getting better. So I'm hoping to come home. And I got the oxygen machine on the 2nd of January. And I said, okay, you guys have him on oxygen. Nothing is helping him here. Let him just come home. I've got the oxygen machine and I've got a Jeep Grand Cherokee. I can plug it into the back, into the adapter, and I can have him on oxygen as soon as we get to the parking garage. They said, he won't make it to the parking garage. He won't even make it to the elevator. You're not taking him out of here. He needs this treatment. And I said, you're not giving him the treatment that we want. And they said, you don't have a say. He's of sound mind and you have no medical directive. And we were treated like second-class citizens until the hospice nurse called us and said, I think it's time for you guys to come up. You need to, come visit him. He's breathing real short and labored. And we think that maybe seeing you guys would help him. I'm like, duh. I mean, this is 11 days later, and they made us double, clothes. We had masks, we had everything. He couldn't even recognize us. We didn't look like ourselves. We're coming in looking like NASA, coming into this hospital room, and his breathing, I mean, he is, gasping for breath. And every second that he is alive, he's just gasping and short breaths. And I knew at that point he wasn't going to make it. They let us stay in the room for like 15 minutes. And then they said, you guys have to go. And at that point, the hospice nurse said, what we're going to try to do is get him moved to hospice. But the concern is we don't know if he'll make it in the ambulance with the oxygen machine that they have in the ambulance. So that's what we've got to figure out. But what we really want to know from you is, can we make him comfortable? Can we give him some Ativan to calm his breathing? And the way they made it sound was that this was going to make him better. This was going to make him to the point where he could go to hospice, and hospice was going to allow us to come in. So at that point, I'm thinking I can get him the ivermectin, I can get him the high dose vitamins, and we'll just pull him out of this. 30 minutes later, he was dead. They called us back. We were at McDonald's drive-thru getting something to drink so we could go back. And they said, he didn't make it. He's passed away. And that was it. They basically asked us to turn back around and come back up to the hospital and collect his belongings. And what funeral home were we going to use?
No
the hospice
compassion.
nurse actually, huh?
So just no compassion anymore. I don't understand what's happened.
Yeah. And I even said to her, you have a duty to do no harm. And she said, this is the protocol and we will follow it. And you are harming your dad by not giving him the drugs that we're trying to give him. And they basically put it all on us, that it was our fault, that because we didn't want any more remdesivir or baricitinib, that we were killing our dad, that my mom's husband and dad.
They're not even allowed to give remdesivir if someone's got kidney issues.
Right.
I mean, it's in the AUA. I mean, it states clearly in the AUA mandate that you have to test for kidney function, and they have to have healthy kidneys to even administer it, even though it's going to destroy the kidneys afterwards anyway. But I mean, they shouldn't have even offered or given it to him in the first place.
Correct. And we told him from the get-go. And the crazy thing is, he had his open heart surgery with the same hospital. and they had all of his records, and they knew that he had 2 active kidney stones, and they still gave it to him. It was in his records. And we made
Yeah.
sure to tell them that up front, and they still didn't care. And he's a diabetic. You're not giving him the insulin, you're giving him insulin shots instead of the pills that he normally takes. And then they bring in these dinners and breakfasts that are full of sugar and fat, and there is nothing healthy on this plate for him. And he's like, well, I'm sure loving the food, but this stuff is not good for me. And he even said while he was on the phone with me once, he goes, could you please not bring me any more banana pudding? I'm a diabetic and this will kill me. And they didn't care. They just brought him whatever the kitchen was making. And it's just crazy to me that you would give a diabetic a plate full of sugar,
Yeah.
and you're not even giving him the pills to regulate the sugar. You're giving him insulin shots after the insulin spikes.
What hospital was this?
This is St. Mary's Hospital in Athens, Georgia.
I'm just wondering if we have any other cases in that hospital. That's just unbelievable negligence.
Yes,
Do you have all the medical records?
I do.
You do.
Mhm.
Okay. Hold on to those for sure. It should be a lot of pages because sometimes you have to ask for everything individually.
Well, and there's a portal, and now I'm locked out from it. But the portal, I would literally log in every day and pull the minutes, like all the stuff that they did to him, all the medicines they administered, the notes from the
Okay.
respiratory therapist, everything,
Okay.
cardiac,
Good.
anytime he got x-rays. And it was
Okay,
crazy
good.
because during the day, he seemed to do great. And then he would always
Nighttime.
crash at like 2 in the morning.
Every single case we have is something happens in the night that it's
Yeah.
getting to be a very obvious pattern.
Yeah.
And you said you had those recordings. Can you forward those to me so I can show them to an attorney?
Yes, yes. I
Okay.
have 2 recordings, one with the hospice nurses and one with the actual doctor,
Okay.
down in the lobby. And they're
So
quite long, so I may have to Dropbox them to you.
okay. Let me know if you have a problem with that, and I'll send you a link or something. We'll figure it out. If
Okay.
they won't go through email, sometimes you can, and on our platform on Zoho, you can send large files. So,
Okay.
yeah, I want to hear those and contact an attorney about that because it's just unbelievable that they're pushing remdesivir on someone that's already a diabetic and has kidney problems.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I had open heart surgery literally 12 months prior. I mean, he's 81 years old. Um, and he was pretty healthy otherwise. Yes, he had comorbidities, but I don't think he would have died if we hadn't put him in the hospital.
Yeah,
Honestly, if I'd had the O2 machine 3 days prior, he would have pulled through it.
ivermectin, hydroxy. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. Well,
And
thank
I
you
was
for
unlucky
sharing.
enough. Yeah, my mom got it, and of course that was the same time he got it, and I didn't catch it, but then 2, 3 weeks ago, I caught it, and that's why I wasn't on this webinar, the first appointment. And I took ivermectin, and I got better. And I'm just
Yeah,
convinced that had I given him enough dosage, he'd still be here.
yeah, yeah. I had COVID. My husband too. We took ivermectin immediately. And we had symptoms for 3 hours,
Yeah. I mean,
and
mine
I've
was
got
like
an
12
auto.
hours, but it was much
Yeah,
better after 12 hours.
yeah. I've got an autoimmune disorder, and he's got high blood pressure, and I'm 52, and it was like I was like, this is what everyone's dying from. This is murder. I mean, flat out.
Yeah. I mean, and it's now the flu is coming back and it never went away. They were counting the flu as COVID. And honestly, when you take a COVID test, I could have had the flu. I could have had a
Yeah,
bacterial
they
infection.
don't
I
even
could have had
test. They're
anything.
not even meant to
It's
test.
not
Yeah,
differentiating. Right.
right.
But at the end of the day, if this is what COVID is, and I know that like Delta was stronger than, or the original was stronger. And my mom lost her taste and she still doesn't have it back. And it's been almost 12 months. So I
Yeah,
think she
same with
had the
my husband.
stronger version. Yeah.
Yeah, same with my husband. I mean, he not his taste, but his smell. But we had the original strain December 2020, and we literally felt bad for 3 hours, and then I was like, "Do you feel bad?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "Me either. They're killing people." That's when I
That is
really
the
got involved.
amazing thing. Yeah, that's the amazing
Mhm.
thing about ivermectin, and there's no money to be made in it. It's the same
Right.
reason why America doesn't make antibiotics. There's no money in it, but there is a need for it. And we
Yep.
have to help our fellow American. And when doctors are taking an oath to first do no harm, but they are killing our loved ones, there
For
is a
money.
huge, yeah. And I brought it up in the recording. I said, you guys are getting paid. My dad is on Medicare, and you're getting a check for number one, the remdesivir, for the
Mhm.
baricitinib. If you ventilate him, you get more, and if he dies in your care, you get even more. And she goes, that is false. That is false. That is not true. And
Oh,
I
we
said,
got the
you
papers to
know
prove it.
the
Yeah.
Medicare codes? She's like, ma'am, I know what I'm talking about, and that is not accurate. I was like, okay, well, you're
Well,
wrong. And then she said, we
yeah.
don't go by anything other than the medical journal. That is what we go off of. No, it's
They're all
Fauci
such
and the
liars.
doctors. Yeah,
Yeah.
that forced you to give this so you could get $30,000 or whatever you got. And because he died of COVID secondary, or what is it? What did they put on his death certificate? Basically, that he died of respiratory distress due ARDS,
Cards.
basically
Mhm.
due to COVID, and that will get him paid because he died
Yep.
in their care.
Well, I definitely can get you in the class action, the remdesivir class action suit that's going on. Have you seen our new bracelets? I have it on, but let me see. I got another one.
No.
I don't know if you can see it. Oh, wait.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, yeah. Yes.
Allergic to
Yes.
remdesivir, baricitinib, and fentanyl. So by law, they can't administer these drugs anymore. So if you're wearing this, they
Oh,
can't give
wow.
you any of them. So we're trying to stop the protocol ourselves. And
Yeah.
yeah. So I haven't taken mine off. So I got it. I like it. And they're kind of
Yes.
stylish, but
Well, and I
yeah,
saw a
that's
frontline doctor literally doing a TikTok on the fact that they're now calling it Veklury instead of
yeah.
the
We're
Remdesivir, which is the brand name. And she says, be aware, because now that they know that people are declining Remdesivir, they're calling it the other thing, so you won't recognize the name. She
Yeah,
said,
that's why we
remember,
put
all
both.
good.
That's why we put both
Yeah,
on
no, I
there.
like it. That is good. And fentanyl was one of the last things they gave him. They gave him
Yeah,
Ativan and fentanyl mixed, and 30 minutes later he was dead. I mean, that I don't know if it's everything that happened that caused the death, but the remdesivir just set him off
for
for a
sure,
total
for
organ
sure.
failure.
We because the attorney thought of this idea for fundraising for the class action, but we've had so many cases where they go in without COVID, like hiccups or car accident, and all of a sudden they're getting the protocol. So,
Yeah.
this protects you if you happen to have to go to the hospital and you can't, they can't do it, then they're really in trouble. But yeah, they're $20 and they go. I got one for everyone in my family for Christmas. Uh,
Oh, I need the link to that because I will
yeah,
certainly get one of those. And then I had done I think I put it in the interview document, but it is a story and it's called Lindsay's Story. And it is a group of women who, her name is Greta. And they're also
yeah,
fighting, Greta
I know
Crawford
she is.
and yeah, and they do the protocolkills.com. But I had
Yeah,
included that story so you guys would have that story if you wanted to publish it. But that was while it was still really raw. It was
right.
February, I think, when I wrote that. So it's very accurate, and days are very accurate because it was still fresh in my mind. But that website was a godsend because at that point I still couldn't post about it because I'd get banned. And I had been
Right.
banned
That's right.
certain times. There were strangers went to my dad's um, funeral announcement and put on there, if you had been vaccinated, you'd still be
Oh
alive.
yeah, there's cruel trolls out there. It's terrible.
I mean,
Yeah.
I cannot even. And then somebody went to a post as my dad's page was memorialized, and they posted on there and said something like, maybe instead of listening to frontline doctors, you should have listened to Lord Fauci. And I commented, you're a bully. Please get off my dead father's page. He is, gone. And I got banned for 7 days. The person who has the fake profile didn't even get touched.
It's
And so sharing my story early on when it happened was almost impossible because every time I would share something,
yeah.
I'd get flagged and tagged and restricted.
Oh
It's
yeah, I'm
sad.
banned from all things Google. My whole YouTube channel got just for doing the interviews. It's unbelievable, the
Oh, yes.
censorship. Anyway, I'm
YouTube and
so
all of them.
Yep.